What happens when a former royal sits down with one of television's most provocative hosts and the conversation takes an unexpected turn? Tonight, we witnessed something unprecedented on live television that had viewers glued to their screens and social media buzzing within minutes. Before we get into this remarkable exchange, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think really triggered this explosive moment. The studio lights blazed as Gutfeld leaned back in his chair, that familiar smirk playing on his face as he introduced his guest. Ladies and gentlemen, we have someone very special joining us tonight, someone who knows a thing or two about making headlines. Please welcome Meghan Markle. The audience clapped politely as Meghan walked onto the set. Her posture confident, dressed in a sleek navy blazer that demanded attention. She took her seat with practiced grace, offering a measured smile to both Gutfeld and the cameras. "Meghan, welcome to the show," Gutfeld began, his tone deceptively casual. "I have to say, it takes courage to come on a show like this, especially considering some of the things I've said about you in the past." Meghan's smile remained steady, though her voice carried a quiet firmness. "Greg, I think it's important to have conversations, even difficult ones. That's how we grow as individuals and as a society." "Growth," Gutfeld repeated, tapping his pen on the desk. "Speaking of growth, you've certainly grown your brand since leaving the royal family. From Duchess to Hollywood producer to podcast host, some would say you've monetized your royal connection quite effectively." A slight tightening around Meghan's eyes marked the first crack in her composure. "I think that's a rather reductive way of looking at it. Greg, Harry and I have worked hard to build something meaningful, to use our platform for good." "Oh, absolutely," Gutfeld replied, his voice dripping with mock sincerity. "Nothing says meaningful like a multi-billion-dollar Netflix deal and complaining about your struggles from a $40 million mansion in Montecito." The audience shifted uneasily, sensing the rising tension. Meghan straightened in her chair, her media training evident as she kept her composure. "I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding about what we're trying to do," she said carefully. "We're not complaining, we're sharing our truth and trying to help others who may be facing similar struggles." Gutfeld leaned forward, eyes gleaming like a predator who'd spotted weakness. "Your truth, interesting phrase. Because truth doesn't usually need a possessive pronoun, does it? Truth is just truth. But your truth, that implies something else, something a bit more subjective. Are you questioning my honesty, Greg?" Meghan's voice dropped a notch, its warmth gone. "I'm questioning the concept," Gutfeld answered smoothly. "When you sat down with Oprah and spoke about conversations around your son's skin color, that was your truth. But other royals had their truth too. So which are we supposed to believe?" The studio went quiet, the hum of the cameras the only sound. Meghan clasped her hands in her lap, knuckles whitening. "What you're doing right now is exactly the problem," she said, voice gaining strength. "You're taking a deeply personal, painful experience and turning it into a gotcha moment for TV ratings." No, Gutfeld waved a hand. "I'm asking the questions millions of Americans want to ask but are too polite to say. You've made a career out of playing the victim while using that victimhood to your advantage. That's not truth. That's strategy." The audience gasped. Meghan's polished exterior cracked, her eyes flashing with genuine anger. "Playing the victim," she repeated, her voice rising. "Greg, I faced racist coverage in the British press. I received death threats. I was isolated and struggling with my mental health. That's not playing the victim. That's being one. But here's what I don't get," Gutfeld continued, unfazed. "If it was so unbearable, if the institution was so racist and oppressive, why not just leave quietly? Why the public spectacle? The interviews, the need to keep reminding everyone how badly you were treated." Meghan's composure broke. Her voice cut sharp because staying quiet is exactly what they wanted. Silence is how oppressive systems survive. "I have a voice, and I'll use it." "Ah, there it is," Gutfeld said with satisfaction. "The real Meghan Markle, not the polished public persona. Not the victim narrative, but the woman who sees oppression everywhere but within her own privilege." "My privilege?" Meghan stood abruptly, her chair sliding back. "You want to talk about privilege? Greg, you sit here in your comfortable studio, joking about people's pain, profiting off division and controversy, and you think you can lecture me about privilege?" In the control room, producers were frantically signaling, but Gutfeld appeared energized, leaning back with clear satisfaction. "At least I'm honest about what I do," he shot back. "I don't disguise my self-interest as social justice. I don't pretend my career is about helping people. I'm a commentator who makes jokes about the news. You're a brand masquerading as a humanitarian." The words hung in the air, like smoke from a fired gun. Meghan stood still, her chest rising and falling. In measured breaths, the audience was silent, captivated by the sharp tension between them. "You know what, Greg?" she said at last, her voice low and dangerous. "I came here thinking we could have a real conversation about important issues. I thought maybe we could find common ground. But it's clear you're not here for conversation. you're here for performance. She began removing her microphone, her motions deliberate and calm. And I won't be a prop in your show. Gutfeld's eyes lit up with predatory delight as he watched her fumble with the mic. Oh, come on, Meghan, don't storm off just because someone finally called you out. This is exactly what I mean. The moment you face real criticism, you retreat and play the victim. Meghan's hands paused, her mic still partly attached. She turned back toward him, her eyes blazing, making some audience members shift uneasily in their seats. Legitimate criticism, she repeated, voice sharp. Is that what we're calling character assassination now? Because I've sat through plenty of legitimate criticism. What you're doing is something else entirely. Enlighten me, Gutfeld said, spreading his hands in mock openness. What exactly am I doing that's so terrible? Asking questions, pointing out contradictions. Isn't that what journalists do? Journalists, Meghan laughed, without humor. Is that what you call yourself? From where I'm sitting, you look more like a professional troll who's figured out how to monetize cruelty. The audience murmured in shock. This wasn't the composed, diplomatic Meghan they were used to. This was someone pushed to the edge. Gutfeld's grin widened. There she is, folks, the real Meghan Markle. Not the saintly version we usually see, but someone with temper, opinions, and edges. Isn't that more honest than all the carefully packaged compassion? You want honesty, Greg? Meghan stepped closer to the desk, her voice dropping to a whisper. That still echoed through the room. Here's honesty. You built your entire career making people like me the punchline. Women who speak up, people of color who won't stay in their lane. Anyone who challenges the status quo becomes your target. People like me, Gutfeld echoed. You mean millionaires who complain on television? I mean people who threaten your worldview. Meghan shot back. Because deep down, you know if women like me can succeed, have a voice, demand better, your audience might start wondering why they've settled for so much less. The studio held its breath. Even the camera crew leaned in, aware they were witnessing something rare. Gutfeld's expression shifted, the sarcasm dimming, replaced by something colder. You think you threaten me? Your empowerment speeches and Netflix deals. Meghan, you're not a revolutionary. You're a product. You're selling feminism and justice the same way McDonald's sells burgers, glossy branding for the masses. At least I'm selling something that helps people, Meghan replied, her voice steady. What are you selling, Greg? Division and cynicism. The idea that anyone trying to do good is just pretending. I'm selling reality, Gutfeld said, voice hardening. The reality that most people see through your act. The reality that your activism is just another form of celebrity worship. The reality is, you left a life of immense privilege because it came with responsibilities and expectations you didn't want to meet. Meghan's composure finally broke. You have no idea what you're talking about, she snapped. You have no idea what it felt like to be trapped in that system, every word scrutinized, every action twisted. Watching my husband's family throw me to the wolves just to protect themselves, trapped. Gutfeld's voice rose in disbelief. You were part of the British royal family. You had access to resources most people can't even dream of. You had a platform to do real, global good and you walked away because what? The tabloids were mean, because I was drowning. Meghan's voice cracked with raw emotion. Because I was having thoughts of self-harm and no one in that institution cared enough to help me. Because they fed stories about me to the press, while staying silent about real scandals involving other family members. Her words, stripped bare of polish, seemed to momentarily catch Gutfeld off guard. But he recovered quickly, his media instincts kicking in. And yet, here you are, he said quietly, very much alive, very much thriving, and using those same painful experiences as material for your media empire. Almost like surviving it all turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to your career. The accusation hit like a slap. Meghan took a step back, her face pale with shock and fury. How dare you, she whispered. How dare you take my lowest moment, my mental health crisis and twist it into a business strategy. You're everything wrong with media today. Everything wrong with how we talk about mental health. Everything wrong with how we treat women who refuse to stay silent. And you're everything wrong with celebrity activism. Gutfeld fired back, rising from his chair to match her intensity. You dress up personal grievances as social justice. You turn private family conflict into content. And then expect applause. For being brave, while it all just happens to support your brand. They stood across from each other, tension thick enough to feel the audience sat frozen, the interview having become something far more visceral. You know what the real tragedy is, Greg, Meghan said, her voice firm but laced with disdain. You could actually be good at this. You're smart, you're articulate, you reach millions. But instead of using that influence to elevate discourse or hold real power, accountably, punch down, you mock people trying to make positive change, because it's easier than facing the truth. Easier than admitting that the systems you defend are broken. You could have been a force for good. And you, Gutfeld responded, his tone, just as sharp, had access to one of the most powerful families on earth. You had global attention. You had the tools to make real change from within, but instead, you burned it all down and walked away. And now you sell the ashes as inspiration. The confrontation peaked, both breathing heavily, their professional masks gone. Cameras kept rolling, capturing every charged second of the moment. The silence between them stretched like a drawn wire. Finally, Meghan spoke, her words slicing through the room. You really want to know what I think, Greg? I think you're afraid. Afraid of people like me. Because we represent everything you've told yourself is impossible, that someone can face pain and choose growth over bitterness. That someone can use their experience to uplift others, not weaponize it. Gutfeld's jaw clenched, his usual smugness completely stripped away. Afraid of what, exactly? Gutfeld shot back. Your inspirational Instagram posts, your empowerment podcast. Please, what I fear is a generation that thinks sharing their feelings is the same as making a difference. At least I'm trying to make a difference, Meghan snapped. What are you doing besides tearing down anyone who dares to hope for better? Cynicism is your brand, Greg. You've trained your audience to believe that caring is naive, that wanting change is foolish, that mocking the fight against injustice is the only honest response. I've taught my audience to think critically, Gutfeld replied, his voice rising, to question narratives, to spot contradictions, to reject the idea that suffering automatically equals virtue. Maybe you should try that sometime. Meghan laughed. Bitter, critical thinking. Is that what you call it when you joke about suicide rates and mental health? When you mock people who speak out against racism? When you turn pain into punchlines? I make jokes about hypocrisy, Gutfeld said, his voice low and pointed. And right now, I'm staring at the biggest hypocrite I've ever had on this show. You preach authenticity while choreographing every appearance. You claim to help others, yet your entire media empire is built on your own trauma. Something snapped. Meghan slammed her hand down on the desk, the crack echoing through the stunned studio. You're right about one thing, she said. I am building something. A platform that tells people they don't have to stay silent. That they don't have to smile through injustice. That they can speak up, even when people like you try to shame them into silence. There it is again, Gutfeld said with bitter satisfaction. Your truth, because apparently regular truth just isn't good enough for the Duchess of Sussex. My truth, Meghan said, voice trembling with fury, is that I survived. I walked away from a system that was killing me literally, and I rebuilt my life. On my own terms, and I will never let people like you convince women that they should suffer in silence to make others comfortable. And my truth, Gutfeld leaned in, his tone razor sharp, is that you're not a survivor, you're a quitter, and not an activist, but an opportunist who turned personal drama into profit. The words hit like a blow. Meghan froze, her face cycling through disbelief, pain, and finally, steely anger. You know the difference between us, Greg? She said, calm but deadly. When I see someone struggling, I want to help. When you see someone struggling, you kick them while they're down and then mock them for crying. Help them. Gutfeld stood up, matching her intensity. You help them by selling them books, podcasts, documentaries, content about your struggles. That's not help. That's commerce in the costume of compassion. At least I'm not profiting off cruelty. Meghan shot back. At least I'm not teaching people that empathy is weakness, that caring is fake, that justice is just performance. The studio was silent except for the faint hum of equipment. Even the production crew seemed frozen by the heat of the confrontation. You want to talk about performance? Gutfeld growled. This entire conversation has been a performance. Your outrage, your moral superiority, your victimhood all rehearsed for maximum impact. And you're deflecting, Meghan replied coolly, not missing a beat, because deep down, you know I'm right. You know your commentary contributes to the same problems you pretend to analyze. But if you admitted that, you'd have to admit, you're not the truth teller you claim to be. Gutfeld's mask of composure finally cracked. You want truth? Here's truth, he said, voice raw. You are exactly what's wrong with public discourse today. You wrap selfishness in the language of justice. You turn personal grievances into grand causes. You make private drama public. Then, act shocked when people question your motives. And, you, Meghan said, voice like a blade, are exactly what's wrong with modern media. You've turned cruelty into content. Cynicism into currency. Division into dollars. You've convinced people that hope is foolish and anyone who fights for better is just pretending. The tension reached its peak. Both were breathing hard, flushed, their professional facades gone. Cameras kept rolling, capturing every second. Then Meghan straightened. Her face shifted. A decision had been made. She removed her microphone, slow and deliberate, and placed it on the desk. I came here tonight hoping for a real conversation, she said, voice calm but disappointed. But you can't have a real conversation with someone who's already decided everything you say is a lie. Everything you do is calculated. Everything you are is fake. She turned to leave, then paused and looked back at Gutfeld, something in her eyes like pity. The saddest part is, your audience deserves better. They deserve to be challenged, not coddled in their bitterness. They deserve conversations that raise the bar, not drag it to the lowest common denominator. With that, she walked off the set. Gutfeld stood alone, the studio erupting into murmurs and hesitant applause. What do you think triggered this explosive confrontation? Was it real emotion or a calculated exit? Let me know in the comments below.